Mire, las matemáticas es un lenguaje.
Mathematics is a highly formalized language which has emerged in human history to meet the demands of mainly two disciplines,
Básicamente de dos disciplinas. La lógica
logic and
y la
physics.
física. En el mundo de la ciencia natural,
The world of the natural sciences, the world of physics, and the world of logic are characterized by the constancy of phenomena.
y en el mundo de la lógica,
In addition to constancy, the world of logic is characterized by the immediacy of conclusions.
ya está incluido el resultado, aplicando
The result is implicit at the start, and the laws of logic are applied instantly.
la lógica carece
To put it another way, logic lacks a time factor. We start from premises and reach conclusions. We construct a syllogism. There is no time. However, in economics, entrepreneurial creativity and the subjective concept of time play the leading roles. A branch of mathematics with a language that can be used in the areas of subjective time and human creativity has never been discovered. We've already seen that when mathematical economists say their models include time, these economists are making a caricature of time. They are spatializing time. You remember that we talked about analog time versus subjective time, right? We saw that mathematical economists simply add subscripts to their variables and say, now we've incorporated time, t1, t2, t3. But that's not right. That is simply assuming that the future is given, that it is to come, and that time is merely movement, the fourth dimension. This has nothing to do with the concept we have of time in economics. Thus, in economics, we can't use math, because it acts as a straitjacket and incorporates a framework of conceptual categories that is too simple to aid us in developing our discipline. Do you remember that we talked about the hierarchical classification of orders? We said that an order can account for simpler orders than itself, but it can't account for itself nor for orders higher than itself. Well, despite its apparent complexity, mathematics is relatively simple, and it can't account for orders as complex as economics, which includes human creativity and the subjective passage of time. Sometimes it is said that mathematical language is more precise than verbal language. That's not true. Verbal language is just as precise as the most complex mathematical language. Furthermore, verbal language is much more flexible, and it encompasses entrepreneurial creativity and the subjective passage of time. Why? Because verbal language has evolved over generations and generations of human beings, each of whom has developed his or her creativity. By writing a screenplay, for example. That is, people have used verbal language to express precisely those realities that mathematics cannot account for, entrepreneurial creativity and the subjective passage of time. Notice all the subtleties of verbal language that cannot be incorporated into mathematical language. All that can be suggested with a word, even with a look. How are you going to mathematize that? In any case, verbal language is just as precise as mathematical language and also far more general and flexible. On top of that, the intermediate steps in mathematics have no meaning, apart from a strictly operational one. What are the intermediate steps in mathematics? We all learned them in elementary and high school, didn't we? What is added on the right moves to the left when we subtract it. What is multiplied in one place moves to another when we divide. We find a common factor. These are mechanical operations, but they have no meaning beyond the operational one. So, what's the problem with using mathematics in economics? We start from a premise, and then we carry out the intermediate operations according to the rules of mathematics, and we get a result. If we expect that result to occur in real life because the intermediate operations are correct, then we are committing a very grave error. The intermediate operations may be meaningless in terms of economic theory. We'll see this is true when we study the Keynesian multiplier. The intermediate steps in mathematics make no sense in terms of economic theory. They only make sense in terms of the automatism of mathematical operations. And these may be completely removed from the reality of what happens in economics. Furthermore, mathematics leads to the error of circular reasoning. Functions are used. Y equals f of x. Functions can also be expressed in inverse form if the projection is bijective. X equals g of y. Take note, sometimes mathematical economists say price is a function of quantity. that it's supply and demand, and other times they say instead that the quantity supplied and demanded is a function of the price. So which is it? They say if the price goes up, you demand less. Ah, okay, I understand you then. What I demand depends on the price. There's a certain logic to that. But what determines the price? The price is determined by what you demand. So which is it then? Does the price determine the quantity demanded, or does the quantity demanded determine the price? Mathematical economists don't know. They use functional language of mutual determination. We know that everything is genetic causal, that the origin of all economic phenomena is human action. I value certain ends. I seek out means. My demand of the means to help me achieve my ends is key to my valuation of my ends. When I demand the means, I end up closing a deal. And last in the chain of events comes discussion of the price. Therefore, the quantities demanded, which follow from my subjective valuations, are what determine the price, and not the other way round. I know the origin of phenomena. Mathematical economists do not. They fall into circular reasoning because they use functions. And that is not to mention the absurdity of using infinitesimal calculus, that is, differential calculus. Infinitesimal concepts make no sense in economics, because in economics we always work in what mathematicians call discrete terms. An infinitesimal change does not provoke any action. What provokes action is a significant change which a human being values. Well, for this, I'll do it. For that, I won't. But how about for a tiny infinitesimal amount more? This reminds me of an old joke. A man asks a woman, "Mum, would you sleep with me for €1,000,000? The woman answers, "Well, I suppose so." Then the man asks her, "And would you sleep with me for €1?" She replies, "Sir, what kind of woman do you think I am?" "We've already established that," he says. "Now we're simply haggling about the price."
Bien, este famoso chiste.
Well, this old joke shows that all human actions are discrete.
Discretas, es decir.
In other words, would you sleep with me for €1? No. Would you do it for 1.000000001 euros? Listen, you're talking nonsense. Either you raise the sum significantly, so I can tell the difference, or there's no deal. We'll talk about this again when we study the theory of prices as illustrated by the script of Pretty Woman. Infinitesimal mathematics, based on infinitesimal increases, makes differential calculus possible. The application of this math to economic science makes no sense. Economic science deals with real human actions, and real human actions, our acts of deciding to go this way or that, depend on our seeing a difference that is significant to us. We can't apply differential calculus. Econometrics is a discipline developed by many of my colleagues. It resulted from the fusion of statistics and mathematics and their application to the field and discipline of economic science. As is logical, econometrics is doubly flawed, because it combines all the errors of statistics with all those of mathematics. The slogan of the Econometric Society is, "Science is measurement." What a pompous slogan. You can't imagine the amount of effort and the hopes that were placed in econometrics, especially throughout the 20th century. All the hopes that were placed in econometrics have collapsed like a house of cards. I repeat, econometrics is based on the use of mathematics and statistics in an attempt to scientifically advance economic theory. Such an attempt is methodologically impossible, and therefore it has failed miserably.
Más lastimosa.